You see, something's going to happen.
What? What's going to happen?
Something wonderful.
What?
I understand how you feel. You see, it's all very clear to me now.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. Tonight we have a very special guest with us, Slick Dissident. I've got Nick over here with the Occult Rejects. I've got Ethan Indigo, and I've got TJ with Modern Problems. So we've got a full cast of characters, and we're talking Dionysus tonight. This is a really deep topic that goes into so many other different fields of study and so many other different connections. I think it's going to be a great show. So to start it off, let's go around the room. People can introduce themselves and plug what they've got. Go ahead, Nick.
All right, yeah. I'm Nick from the Occult Rejects. You can find the Occult Rejects on all major podcast hosts and BitChute, Rumble, and YouTube. And yeah, thank you very much for bringing this topic to the show, man. I'm really looking forward to this. Especially, we got the man himself, Slick, finally on with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Slick, go ahead and tell them where they can find you.
Right on. Yeah, Slick Dissident is my YouTube channel. I also have the slickdissident.com up and running. I've had a wonderful creative outpouring and turned a lot of my ciphers and artistic endeavors into merch for the masses. So, yeah, so often in my earlier videos, I was telling everybody, donate down below. And I was like, no, people want real material reciprocity. So, yeah, I've manifested that and it's out there for the people. And also, you'll see me running around on the Interverse with Chance Garton, one of my main homies. We've done quite a bit of work on demystifying Hollywood and cinema and mythology. So yeah, those are some of my greatest works out there to be found, but I do get around. You'll see me popping up on other channels here and there and everywhere. So thanks for having me, fellas. This has been a long time coming. I'm so stoked for this one.
Absolutely. Ethan Indigo, tell them where they can find you.
Well, it's my honor to be here. I appreciate being involved in great topic, Headless, and I know this is going to be fun to hear some of your insights. I'm on all the usual social media and so on, and I am mostly a writer and have written numerous books, and I'm always dropping articles, or not always, but frequently dropping articles, including on Occult Research Institute. So thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, Ethan. TJ, Modern Problems, tell them where they can find you.
Yo, what's up? I'm TJ. You can find me at Contemporary Problems and contemporaryproblems.com. And yeah, anywhere, Contemporary Problems, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok. I'm there.
Awesome. So tonight, it's Dionysus, and I think it's a very appropriate time to get into it because I think a lot of people aren't really familiar with this obscure deity from the ancient past and how it applies to basically everything we see going on in politics, in culture, and all that stuff today. And it's very, very easy to overlook the guy because it's so confusing. So, for an example, I've got the Orphic hymn to Dionysus pulled up here, and I'll start it off with this, and then I'll throw it over to Slick to sort of give a little bit of insight, because he knows the Greek pretty well and knows about this kind of stuff. So let me pull it up here. I call Dionysus the loud roarer who wails in revel, firstborn, two-natured, thrice-born, Bacchic king, wild, inscrutable, cryptic, two-horned, two-shaped, bedecked in ivy, bull-faced, warlike, howling, holy, divine victim, feasted every other year, adorned with grapes, beckoned in foliage, counselor to Zeus and Cori bore you, on a secret bed, immortal Damon. Listen happily to my voice, sweet and gentle divine inspiration, having kindly heart with the aid of your chaste nurses. What do you think of that there, Slick?
Yeah, man. The Dionysian rites have been upon us for quite a while. I do believe that, we are in an age of undermining expectations. We have been for a while, and a lot of people that'll harmonize to your experience. My research into Dionysus has been very rewarding, and it's really fascinating how looking back in time makes current events come into fascinating context. And one nugget that just came across the dashboard recently is this word Elan, E-L-A-N. The A has a fancy little, not a umlaut, but a little splash over it. Elan is a French word that is generally meant for like fancy-faced or very poised. But in the literary circles, the definition for Elan is the Dionysian vitality, the vitality of Dionysus. And so all of this idolizing of the billionaire class and having one particular idol who's going to send us off into space, whose name is Elan, is a fascinating communion. We are having a communion of this idol. In that, also, one other historical tidbit, Clay Shaw, the only person persecuted for the JFK event, the JFK event was a communion right before Thanksgiving. And I can elaborate on that. But Clay Shaw was on the record describing JFK as quite Elan. He described JFK as he was complimenting him as though to say, I would never kill him because he has Dionysian vitality. But in the most fascinating way, this was a revelation onto the masses that we are communing. We are all partaking of this Dionysian rite, this idol. And there's always a level of grotesqueness that the psyche cannot handle, that is designed to snap the onlookers.
Right. So in a lot of ways, you can draw the comparison between the wine and the blood. The wine and the blood, when it comes to Dionysian rites, those two things are paramount. And they call him the god of the vine. You heard in the Orphic hymn there, they talk about the vine and foliage a lot. This is a very earthy type concept. He is very related to the underworld and to vines. And I think the vines could be veins, could be the arteries in the body. This isn't just pumping the blood, it's also connecting every generation. And for every generation, there's a new iteration of drama. And Dionysus is the god of drama. So all of these two formed, again, it just keeps going back to that duality over and over again. Duality, duality, duality. All of these different sects that end up butting heads, all of the reactions and equal and opposite reactions, it all has to do with that Dionysian drama. So when you see all of these TikTok stars who are freaking out over Trump, what you'll notice is that they all have septum piercings. Bull-faced, literally bull-faced. They're being pulled around by the nose, and it's right there with that Dionysian drama. And everybody's getting in on this Dionysian drama. They love the twofold nature of it or the polarity of it.
Yes, a lot of revelation in the sovereignty world has a great deal to do with simply understanding that the world is a stage and we are but actors upon it, and your government ID is your mask. And like I said, these revelations are meant to snap the onlookers, to alter your reality in a dangerous way, but for the sake of laying waste the old to rebuild the new. There's a rejuvenation And then also just think of what that revelation that your ID is just a mask and we're all on a I call it the globe theta. Theta is the sleep state. And I also call it the mind's dream media. We are all in this nebulous Dionysian theater, whether you like it or not. But yes, I love that. The word persona means mask, which means that the whole world is under a Dionysian spell. And every once in a while, you got to shake people for the Great Reset and this conflagration and this people anchoring into antipathy, that we really have a bad guy out there and we really got to get him. It's the first priority. So yeah, I just mentioned that, the theater and the theta.
Right. Well, to get into the story of Dionysus, in the Orphic hymn, you see that he was born 3 times, right? And this goes into this triune aspect of Dionysus, where he's dying, being reborn, dying, being reborn. And in this case, the first Dionysus that's sort of mentioned by the Orphics is this guy named Zagreus. And Zagreus is supposed to be the son of Hades and Persephone. So he thinks. But Zagreus means the pit where animals are caught. The pit where animals are caught. This goes back into the veins. This goes back into the wine. This goes back into the foliage, because this is the physical body. And Zagreus is tasked with feeding the parts of the Titans that are left. The Titans have all been pulled apart after the Titanomachy, the battle between the Olympians and the Titans. They've all been pulled apart, and Zagreus' job is to pull the goats up to the pit and shove them in so that he can feed what the remaining parts of the Titans so that they don't reassemble themselves, come back together, and destroy the world. Well, he gets a little bit too close to the edge, and he falls into the pit, and they rip his body to pieces. And what ends up happening is the different pieces of Zagreus go different places. His heart goes to Zeus, because Zeus knows that he's Zagreus' real father. And Zagreus is then, his heart is put inside of Zeus's body, inside of his thigh, and then he reemerges as Dionysus, right? And the idea there is that by being killed and reborn, you are completely flushed out of all transgressions, all of the things that made your previous life, not so good. All of the bad emotions are basically released in death. And I've got behind me this picture of Gustav Klimt's medicine, right? Here's the goddess Hygeia, daughter of Asclepius, offering to the onlooker the cup of Letha. And the cup of Letha makes you forget. This is like the purification process in death, and you're reborn, new into the world. You don't have all those burdens, into this river of souls right here where everybody's asleep. So in essence, by taking this cup of Letha and by erasing your memories, you act as you're asleep, right? And this goes into the part of how this Dionysian rite kind of controls you if you're not aware of it. Everybody assumes that they have free will, and it's very hard for them to imagine that they don't. But without understanding the signs and symbols associated with this problem, reaction, solution God, this threefold, threeborn solution to everything, and this polarity of forces, without an understanding of that, your body, this animal pit that you're thrown into here on the earth, is basically animalistic. You have to be reborn by understanding these things and actually having that free will informed by knowledge, right? Having that communion. And it takes a lot of birth, death, and rebirth for you to come to that point. And so in this one myth, Zagreus has this magical mirror that he's capable of traveling to different realms with. So you've got in this ancient Greek tale a talk of a multiverse, right? And in this multiverse, you've got the good Hera, you've got the bad Hera, right? And they're talking about this stuff thousands of years ago. So I don't know what they're doing with Marvel, but I think they're just basically replaying all this stuff because you've got this dimensional aspect coming into play in these hymns and rites having to do with this stuff. And I believe personally that all of these stories of the gods came from shamanic voyages that the Greeks would do using drugs and other substances and meditation to achieve a certain level of consciousness. So when they're talking about multiversal concepts and these mirrors that reflect people into other dimensions, it's important to keep in mind that if any one of us, and I think pretty much anybody in America, were to play the game, Are You Smarter Than a 5th Century Athenian, we would all fail, right? So these people are way smarter than us, and we don't give them enough credit for that. But their shamanic voyages aren't just stories. They're also paths for the soul to follow.
Yeah, I really think that, like you were mentioning before about the shamanic journeys, you know how many like old, like you'll look at like old grimoires and stuff, and or like old spell books, and like a lot of them would be like, why do these all have like these like dangerous herbs in them? Like how many of them that you'll look at these old things and they all have poisonous shit in them. I think like maybe that is part of the magic. That's the death is an aspect. Especially with look at the shamans. I mean, they pretty much come out and say it. You know what I'm saying? But I think that's something to think about. When you look at some of these old recipes and you're like, why do these things always have all these poisonous herbs in them? Because maybe it's meant to knock you the fuck out. Some aspect.
With
right?
the Greeks. With the Greeks and Dionysus specifically, it was about Dionysian madness, right? So these poisonous plants would cause you to lose all senses. It wasn't like the drug trips you hear about going down to the Amazon and things like that. This was meant to make you absolutely insane. And he had these adherents to his cult that would go around ripping people apart with their bare hands, right? So like women that would go around ripping people to pieces. And we'll get into that in the story of Dionysus a little bit later on. But this idea of fanaticism goes directly into the idea of drama. You can't have the energy without the fanaticism. And that is exactly where we're at today. The drama of fanaticism between two forces is the human condition, right? And I want people to keep in mind that they're talking about tools of social control right now. So if you can get one side in a fanatic, melee with another side, you can have control over both. And they're putting that out there because Dionysus isn't just a rural god, he's also an urban god. So these are all these aspects that are peeled down from the general concepts and given a specific aspect.
I love this. I love this. This is so powerful. The urban god is, the city slickers, right? Right. In the rural is the outdwellers, but also governmentally, centralized government is that center hub. But then they always have that perimeter, the outer perimeter where they're waging war. And the supply lines between the center and the outer perimeter is crucial. And I just want to say, when the Smith Modernization Act just flipped the script on everybody in 2012, completely fulfilling the Mayan prophecy, all of our guns pointing out for expansionism, all of our lies are propaganda. Propaganda is an anagram for Papa Dragon. Propaganda and Papa Dragon are an anagram. We used to point all of our lies internationally to the expansionism. Well, Smith Modernization Act, they just turned all those lies into the central hub. And everything is different now. The Mayan prophecy has fully come into fulfillment. And also, I want to mention vanity, right? He's divine, and there's a vanity to associating with your theaters, with what you watch in the theater. There's a certain vanity that we cannot resist. It's a delicious vanity. And one more thing, you mentioned the frenzies, the manias, the zeal, the zealots. Something that I do is I work on the Enneagram. It is a very functional paradigm of vices and virtues and the habits of human behavior that is predictable. It's so predictable. It's fascinating. And so when I hear words like sloth or perseverance or diligence, I actually have a complete category for the whole spectrum of that vice, virtue, human expression, that characteristic. And it applies to the individual, which is like, people do horoscopes for the vanity of reflecting themselves. But something that I try to do is remain objective and stay in the homunculus of the masses. And just recently, I heard somebody very wise talking about if society becomes too slothful, and I'm looking at my Enneagram, that's number 9 is sloth, then the social engineers must inject frenzy. They have to bring zeal to get people off their ass from the sloth aspect. And zeal or frenzy is a specific erote from the Greeks. This is a cherubim or a desire. It's like a floating little angel that inspires want. And this word zeal is a specific erote. It's not just Cupid. Cupid is that's an overly generic term, and we are missing out on a lot to know if you learn Cupid's entire family, one of which is named Zeal. And zealotry is the conflagration between comedy and tragedy. One person's joke is another person's demise, and one person's demise is the other person's joke. And so socially, the Smith Modernization Act has just sparked off the zeal of flipping what you thought was funny. Well, they built those walls not for keeping people out, it's for keeping people in. And so that flip of the script is vast and profound.
Right. And if everybody takes a look at the election map, you'll notice that now there's no more blue states. There are only blue cities, right? It's the cities versus the rural. And now the cities have become oppressed. So now they have to expand out and they have to expand their influence because now the red has encompassed all of it. So there's going to be you could map this out. There's going to be a reconsolidation of power and then an expansion from the cities outward, and it's not going to be pretty.
I just wanted to say that that's a very interesting point that you talk about the septum piercings, right? And in the Eastern traditions of medicine and biology, that piercing is a certain submissive attitude. Is going to result in a certain submissive attitude. So they warn you, don't do that. And it is very much like the lead that is put on the bull. And the bull is Shiva's vehicle. And Shiva is an iteration of Dionysus, and the bull being this wild, having a wild aspect to it, but also having an agricultural tool and propensity and so on and so forth to it as well. And of course, Dionysus is a agricultural god at the very root. And one other thing I was going to say, the bull, of course, is revered in India and so forth, rather the bovine, all cattle, and why there are numerous reasons, but one related to the wildness and intoxication of Dionysus is how lucky it is to have bullshit around, because that's where these mushrooms will grow from that may or may not have been included in the Dionysian rites or similar.
Well, I believe they absolutely were. At least some sort of psilocybins were included in the Dionysian rites. And the idea there is that by bringing things into harmony and balance between the city and the rural, you could then dispel the demons. because the demons hate balance. But what we have today when we talk about demons is you've got the drama. You've got to have the drama of the exorcist coming in and expelling the demons. But really, have you provided the balance, or have you replaced one zeal, one madness for another?
So I have a grand overarching theory on what Dionysus is, and it's kind of I feel like an asshole making a knowledge claim. And I feel like kind of a killjoy, because the mystery of Dionysus, I think it should just live on forever. I think it's fun the way it is. I don't want to make it mundane, and I don't want to claim to have the answers to anything. But you guys want to hear my overall theory?
Hit it.
Dionysus, the word is encoding the placenta. Yoni cis. The cis means the basket. It is the container, it's the vessel, it's the full estate of the lineage of the ancestors. I believe there is a divine right of kings that has been preserved in various branches, where the mother, in a sacred rite, in a perfect sacred rite, the mother consumes the placenta of the child only for the child's sake. This is a divine, perfect, sacred cannibalism. It's the only cannibalism that is born out of life. Every other flesh you'll ever eat, with the exception of mushrooms considered flesh, every other flesh you'll ever eat comes from a death. The placenta is the only flesh born from birth. And that enigma of the facts is fascinating. And remember what I'm talking about, people snap when their paradigm breaks. The mother should eat this placenta, and it should enrich the breast milk with all the stem cells, the T cells, the ancestors, and not only create a complete and intact whole angelic being, but I think there are dormant capabilities that after maybe 7 generations of passing the placenta from mother to child, we get a very exceptional avatar. And I don't think they can just let this go running willy-nilly for anybody's sake. I think the Scientologists have this on lock. And so I think that this avatar that eventually is manifested, I think there's a competition to get your avatar, your family line, to be the one at the tip of the top for the offering, to become the scapegoat. And I think also that there is a vast amount of abuse of this sacred cannibalism. And it is used in every wrong way possible, in all of the wrong ways for this transmission. For example, somebody else eating the placenta for their sake, the placenta going where it shouldn't go. Now, this sounds weird. You're like, who's out there eating placentas? Well, guess what, folks? Vaccinations are placental based. It is a commodity, and they make thousands off of every placenta. And this is driving the organ harvesting industry on the black market. And so they make plenty off of keeping the placenta not instilled onto the masses. And so that is my overarching theory on what Dionysus is. And then one more thing I'll just float out for us to weave on later is the turning blue. The blue aspect of Shiva, the blue aspect of Dionysus. This is a universal truism. The placenta is blue. The placenta is deep purple. It's the color of the murex. It's the color of the raiment of the Christ. But I also, another fact, the Rh negative blood. In a certain context, the lineage of birth, Rh negative child can be born on the first round, but then subsequent children will be born blue babies. And so I think a great amount of these mysteries are kept sensationalized. And I feel bad making them mundane and easily explained. But I think we are looking at a great amount of the foundation of the Dionysian rites. And I'm going to throw Hammond under the bus. He's not talking about the placenta. He's got all these books. He's got all this insight on the mysteries of the medical field of Greece. And he never talks about the placenta.
I couldn't agree more. I think if you look back at the ancient rites of Zagreus, it's most commonly associated with the eating of raw flesh. And I don't think they were cooking the placenta. And I think that's a
great point. You know, today, a lot of mamas, big love, so much respect for the intention, so much respect for the intention. I don't want to pull anybody down from their glory. But you send the placenta off to get cooked into powder, put into pills, and then you eat it and you think you're doing, you got to go raw, y'all. Throw some bananas, some blueberries in there, put it in the blender. You know, I don't know. I'm not a midwife. This is not medical advice, but I do know that the midwives were the target of the witch trials time and time again. And Socrates is the midwife of the soul. There's a lot to know in the Socratic method.
And this also goes very deep into Egyptian lore as well, because they had specific places that they would bury the placenta on the Pharaoh's road. And this idea of the placenta and burying it and the divine twin and the idea of Pisces being connected to all of this, the two fish connected in the water, this goes into the Jesus rites as well. This has a lot to do with Jesus, because Jesus would be seen, I mean, he was seen back then as being the iteration of Dionysus. He goes into the underworld, he rises again on the third day. You know, these are all the parts of the Dionysian rite being applied to a different culture in a very similar way that they were applied in Greece. And so when we look at what's happening today, where we see this huge revival taking place, because here's what you'll hear all the time. It's, I saw all the evil in the world and I realized there must be God. That's what they say when they mention their conversion from atheism over to Christianity, is they say, I saw the evil in the world. That must mean there's a God. There's no better explanation or connection to Dionysus than what they're saying, and they don't even know it.
That's exactly what happened to me when I heard the Vegas event. The morning that my buddy, we were all just sitting around, we had just got done, we were cleaning up from a hurricane in Florida, and we're all just pooped, we're just exhausted. My buddy just clicks on his phone and all I hear is machine guns and screaming. I freaked me right out. I couldn't even handle it. I had to leave the room, and I was on decaf for like 3 days after that. And I just kept thinking, there's got to be a God. There's got to be a God to keep this at bay. You know what I mean? It was very Dionysian, just like you said.
And this, I think this goes into the bullhorned aspect of it, because the bull is going to hit you and hit you hard. And it's going to turn you around. It's going to throw you up into the air. The idea that this rampaging bull is going to do anything but create the problem reaction solution is really, I mean, because this is going into what's going to happen in these self-fulfilling prophecies in the Bible. They're talking about this major Gog-Magog war that we're seeing shape up right now with all of the choices that Trump is making for his cabinet, because it's all leading up to that specific goal. Are people going to wake up? This is a divine aspect that hardly anybody's talking about, but this Dionysian aspect is within this planet right now, and it's coming together quickly. They say some years, decades pass, and I think we're in one of those years, and by the end of it, we're going to see a very different picture of our futures.
You know, go ahead.
Please.
I talked to
I just wanted to sit back up both of what you guys were pointing out about the lack of individual initiatory rites in modernity and the perversion of what would be initiatory rites of the collective. And really, the dumb down of society and the shock and awe, if you will, of peoples through manipulation of events and manipulation of perception of events. And, one meditation lesson or tool that's very helpful to balance our own thoughts, and in that sense is a really high-end pursuit, is the pursuit of impartiality. Not being supportive of a party, not being partisan, and not being partial as much as we can, trying to be complete and open and honest with ourselves, beginning with our own perception, and just even for a minute, as a thought experiment, just pretending not to be supportive of a party and then viewing the situation can be enormously revealing of a non-repeated, if you will, reality, of the more truer reality. And that's from Moism, M-O-H or M-O in Chinese philosophy. That pursuit of impartiality and thus balance is a real helpful idea, I find. I just wanted to share that.
I love that. I have a friend on my channel often. He uses the term ambivalence, and not to be caught in antipathy or sympathy. And I find that to be, I find that is
the lowest lesson for sure. Right. And even not ambivalence to strangers or grasshoppers, but and just not having more care for your sister, trying to be not ambivalent to those beings, but and not lacking love for your sister, of course, but just having that equanimity look at all beings having a goodness in them and a right in them.
That's such a good word, equanimity. I love that word. I want to throw a couple more things on the placenta pile because I could go for days on it. So the consuming of the placenta, right? One of Dionysus's epithets is flesh eater. But the process that the mother goes through when she consumes the placenta for the child to instill the full estate and maybe dream time is called placentaphagy. Placenta, P-H-A-G-E. And this is, phagy just means to eat. And think about it, all of the animals in the world, all of the mammals, they participate in placentaphagy. When Adam and Eve were kicked out because they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, guess what? There was another tree that they didn't participate in. There was a hidden tree that after they get kicked out, God was talking to his homies. He's like, whew, it's a good thing we got them out of here. They almost found the tree of life. This is the placenta. And I do believe that after a few generations, a bloodline can re-enter into Eden and have a certain harmonic communion with the animals around us that we lack, that we've been sterilized from. And this word placentaphagy, it's in the mouths of everybody over the past couple of years because it is also it's hidden in the word Palestine flag. The Palestine flag has been vilified, has been made evil, has been made controversial, has been made the center of the antipathy. It is the centerpiece of this antipathy. And I just also, Headless, I think you'll dig this. Hear the similarity in Palestine and Palestina. Palestine and Palestina. She was born with her armor intact, and she is the essence of wisdom. That is her name. And so there is something fascinating about using the word wisdom or Palestina to trigger, to spark people into the manias and the frenzies. And so my ambivalence hears these words on a much deeper level And I want to pay that forward to you fellas, that we are making Pallas Athena the centerpiece of controversy.
I think you're right, because the idea of justice can bring about that frenzy as well. And just to throw in another little point, so Zagreus was given Mount Ida as his home. And Mount Ida is where Zeus was taken care of by Corybantes, which would be the goat. And so the goat was his nurse, right? This is the water goat, right? Or you know what I'm talking about, the zodiac sign. And so this, right. And so he was at the place where he was nursed, where Zeus was nursed into becoming a full-grown man. And this is where they would have the rites of eating raw flesh. So you couldn't get closer to the idea of placentophagia than that. I mean, it's right there.
I bet you guys over on the Occult Rejects, they're sick of me talking about placenta in the chat. They're like, what is this guy on about? I'm so happy to actually give context to all the weird stuff I say.
It's fine. Well, we're not actually live.
Well,
so.
I think it's very important because it provides that mirror. They would talk about the placenta as being the divine twin that would die for you to be born. And so this divine twin, as it's dead for you to be born, also implies a lot of the phrases in the New Testament about Jesus Christ. He's died so that you can be reborn. And this whole idea goes directly back to Dionysus, when you've got Jesus turning the water into wine, and you've got Jesus walking on the water, and you've got all these other things that are pulled together with the idea of Dionysus that's so deeply involved in the mysteries. And I want to talk a little bit about esotericism, because all of these myths have esoteric meanings that really start to mesh together. You know, and so the esoteric meaning should be contemplated. Without the contemplation of the esoteric meanings, you're not going to get the right connections.
Very well.
You know, similarly, the word German, it in its essence, it means brother, the Hermano. And so there has been, I mean, it's so obvious. I don't even have to add context to that. But the vilification of the divine twin, it even goes to big brother. Our own words turn our divine twin into something to fear. And then let's not miss twin towers. All very Gemini, very Germani, this divine twin, and somehow always making it scary, you know, to the extent that anybody who claims to be in touch with their demonic higher self must be a Crowleyite. Let's burn him at the stake.
Right. So
I just wanted to say that sorry, Headless. This will be real quick. I just wanted to say that the consumption of the placenta is very much like a primal alchemy, right? And of course the Dionysus with the grapes and the wine, this is very much like a really primal agricultural alchemy that's, you know, happens to be wonderful as well. So I just wanted to point out that those aspects of alchemy that are shared there.
And I often think about like the burden of, as a man, it is a burden to know these things in so many ways. For one, I lost my chance. My mama didn't eat the placenta, so this is for me. It's like I'm speaking as an outsider. You know, it is all speculative, to a large degree. So it seems like there's an element of hopelessness. But then you're like, no. I'm gonna make a baby. I'm with a beautiful woman. I'm gonna have her eat the placenta. How are you gonna get her to eat that placenta? How do you think a man is gonna convince a woman to eat the answer is the midwife. We've lost the midwives, and the midwives knew the recipe, and they had the grace to convey these potentials. And I just want to throw 1666 and the London fires in the mix, because that is when the prize law was launched. This is when birth certification happened, and the prize law became piracy, became lawyers. And so when your mother informs on you and you go into court and you say, yeah, that's me, this is called denkronverlust, loss of thinking space, the conflagration or the confusion of the subject for the object. And that's what happens when you answer the summons.
So that's a very relevant, because the what they're prosecuting is your twin, right? They're prosecuting your corporate body, the one that you don't necessarily know you have. And that kind of goes back to the Germany angle, because it wasn't Germany until after World War II. You know, it wasn't the divine twin until after the Americans, who were mostly German. If you look at a demographic map of the United States, it goes right along with the election maps, because all of that red would be German descendant people. They settled the country. There's a very small portion of the United States that is British, and that's in New England and in Salt Lake City and in Utah. So the British are in these two very specific areas, but for the vast majority of the country, it was German settlers that came over through the Hessians, through all this other settlement that took over the entire Midwest, right? So from one coast to the other on the interior of the country, these were the farmers, these were the engineers, these were the builders of the country, was the German people. In 1918, they made the speaking of German illegal during the First World War. And so they brainwashed an entire generation to forget their German heritage, because we're at war, and they didn't want to have any of the people loyal to that German people. And then in World War II, they had the twins fight each other.
That is
The
fascinating.
losing twin is Germany.
They made it illegal to speak German in 1918. That hits a chord for me. Oxane 19 is a really potent numerical truth. It encodes Solimon. It's the sun card and the moon card, Solimon. It also encodes Aachen, Nathan. And between this sun and moon, when you bring them together, you get the moon, and the star is a monster, but it's also the Moorish flag. But ultimately, what they are, the egregore that all of those mouth sounds are drawing on, I believe, is not any eclipse. When the sun and the moon come together, and that's where the monsters come out, and the light is different. You know, people's instincts go primal on a deep level. I think it's also encoding the lunar standstill, particularly. There's a very specific type of lunar eclipse that is prolonged, and it only happens every 18.6 years. And so between sun card, moon card is this sacred number, 18.6. And in 1860 in the United States, the Congress was at a standstill. They couldn't, they never really passed the 14th Amendment. It's all been a fugazi ever since 1860. And that is the lunar standstill number. And you're telling me that they put the German language on lock in 1918, which again encodes the lunar standstill. I think this is the pressure point of the high astronomical priest class. They know these numbers too well.
Well, just one more thing to throw in before I throw it to TJ to see his presentation is that in German, the sun is a feminine word, and the moon is a masculine word, just like a mirror image of what we believe on this side of the pond. So there's a definite reflection in there. Go ahead, TJ.
Sure. I have I shared some slides in the chat. Oh, there we go. I was tripping out at the word just Dionysus, just looking at that itself. So we'll start with that. And I broke it down as Di, on, Y, sus. And Di is the mind. On is like your willpower. It's like that also, it goes back kind of to the nose rings a bit, because your nose, what you know, you're knowing, So if you're in the knowing, then you probably wouldn't pierce your knowing. Your know is your nosing. And then the why, and that's connected to the willpower, like the word on, right? Because it's also like, I just told a friend today too, and I've preached it before, that when you know when to say no, that flips around and you turn on. You become enlightened. And then why is enlightenment. And long story short, if you understand the alphabet, then you understand the A to X. You understand how to swing the axe. And once you learn how to swing the axe, you got to learn why. And the sign Cancer, which I also talk about, is in the shape of a Y, and it's at the top of the chart. So when the sun's the highest in the sky, I think it has a lot to do with enlightenment. So that it's just more evidence of the why. And then, yeah, sus, like Slick Descent, and mentioned earlier too, same kind of thing. And it's like sustaining too, right? And sustaining as well, like if it's in the basket or the bowl, it's also like, it made me think of music and sustaining in music. It's bouncing off the walls, and it's like, it's creating its own sustaining through its like bouncing and echo itself. And to get into this, Dionysus equals 126 in English ordinal. I just at the top, I have the pretty simple to follow or figure out the different ordinals, but 126, this is also the alphabet because it's A to Z, 1 to 26 in the 26 letters. And it's this crazy code. Like a lot of us that know the Gematria or got into it, there was this catalyst event that sparked it in a lot of us, or at least in my friends, we all say the same thing. And that was the death of Kobe Bryant. And Kobe Bryant died on 1/26. And it's it was the big ritual. It was like I call it the Kobe 19. It's like, I have a lot of work on this. Like it's a huge rabbit hole. And Kobe, you take that B, you flip it around, it's D, it's code, the code's in there. So now we can look at these words a bit that come up. 11/11, right? That's when the war in 1918, the First World War, ended.
A mirror of K. 11/11 is a mirror of K. It's encoded in America.
And America has a lot of the German, or the twin as well, and German influence, but the twin as well, because it's also like America could be a Merkaba, and then it's also like Mercury is kind of hidden in the code of America too. Mercury, America as well.
Can I throw in something on mirrors there for a second?
Yeah.
So when you're just looking at one mirror and you've got your reflection, that's the twofold nature of it. That would be the polarity. But let's say you put another mirror behind you, right? What you end up getting is infinity. And what do you get when you divide something in three parts equally? You get 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 repeating, right? So that idea of 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 repeating is like a mirror into infinity, an infinity mirror. And if you think about it, it's those reflections that are created through that give us the physical world, because it's, light bouncing off of different objects and giving us the ability to see. And you get down low enough and all sort of color fades away, right? So the light's bouncing even more. And so you're talking about these objects that are now vibrating the universe into existence with all of that light as it's penetrating every object. So maybe what we're looking at is a hologram, and that holographic aspect would be the encoding of all these different numbers.
Yeah, TJ, these numbers are beautiful to my eyes. They harmonize very powerfully to geometric forms I've discovered in the Enneagram. 126 is actually a Hornavian group that is considered, there are three different personality types. The 1 type, the 2 type, and the 6 type are grouped together, and they're considered the most compliant. And this is a really useful tool to identifying what harmonizes to you. But it's just lovely how it all adds to a 9, right? All of these numbers, even in different ciphers, kind of have that 9 at the fundamental.
Definitely. And Gematria, like the word of Gematria came from geometry as well. And you can use like numerology in that kind of geometrical way as well.
Oh, one thing I wanted to add, TJ, to the Kobe Bryant weave that I think you'd enjoy is, isn't it fascinating how Kobe was sacrificed so that LeBron James could come into place for the GOAT, just like Kennedy was replaced so that LBJ could come into place. Yeah, very powerful echoes.
It even connects with the 126 is also Wayne Gretzky's birthday, who's the GOAT of hockey. And then Wayne Gretzky wore number 99. Jupiter equals 99 in Gematria, and we have Jupiter in the reverse cipher matching with Dionysus, connecting it all. Yeah, if any of these stand out, like it's cool, like reflections, find the cameras, screenshot, influencers. We brought up TikTok. TikTok equals 86. 86 equals 126. And in the kitchen, when you 86 something, it means that there's no more of it. If the restaurant's out of it for the night, you tell the server, hey, 86 the ketchup or 86 the ranch or whatever. And then, so it just goes across the 3 words in the middle matched in all 4 ciphers. And then, and then those are just like the reverses and the ones that matched. Very interesting. If any of them stand out to you or anything like that, or we can go to the next one. It's just more numbers and codes.
The died suddenly is remarkable in relation to the rebirth cycle, or initiatory kind of rite even of the Dionysus idea.
Yeah,
I'm seeing 2 years and Jesus form. Right? So you've got the twofold nature, and you've also got that Jesus form sort of encoded right smack dab in the middle. And if you think about it, Dionysus is this kind of idea of going from the underworld to Mount Olympus, right? And in doing so, it's kind of making that cross, because you've got the horizon line right in the middle. So the idea of Dionysus is encoded into the cross as well. So
yeah, and one of the first episodes I did with Occult Rejects, I talk about the number 720 the whole time, which is 2 360s. And 2 360s, like, so 2 cycles. I kind of point out that the rituals happen in 2 years, that like you'll see the same things. If you're paying attention to it, you'll see the same kind of things happen 2 years in a row, kind of thing. You'll see a lot of repetitive patterns, and there's all these 2-year cycles that it showed up a lot in. So here I just have a bunch of the weird ciphers. It's Fibonacci. It's spelled like that just to be shorter. These are just different ciphers that are different ways to find it. One that I find that's the most important in this, the Agrippa, is actually just like the Latin or the Jewish cipher in translation. And then prime numbers not divisible by any number but itself, I find is a very important cipher. And if we're just like break down these numbers real quick, 1323, I would read that as like the death enigma. So that fits with like the Dionysus, like that's how I'd read it. The 13 is the death and the 23 is the enigma. So it's very cool how that works. 883 is a prime number. It's the 153rd prime number. It's also like a 3 is half of an 8, right? If you flip a 3, if you mirror a 3, right, with the mirror, you get the 8. So it's this 2.5 kind of code, which the 212, that's the boiling point in Fahrenheit. So this reaching a boiling point, changing state, going liquid to gas. It's a very big code. I have a lot on that stuff. 4, 6.
What was I?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to hop in there. What was I just saying about the mirrors?
Yeah.
You've got the 3 reflections and the 2 infinities.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then I kind of like was just trying to code that word, like, or the 883 is kind of like becoming your own king, kind of. It is kind of just like what I kind of looked through, and I just stared at that number for a while. That was kind of that's what I wrote down, at least. That's what I kind of came to. 465 would be having your mindset on harmony gives you energy. It's also the 30th trigonal numbers. Trigonal numbers are 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 equals 10. So 10 is a trigonal number, and that's why in the trigonal cipher it's the 4th cipher. So the trigonal cipher is all those. So 465 is 1 + 2 + 3 all the way to 30 degrees, like in the zodiac as well. Also, just like how in reverse on the last slide, it equaled 90 being a right angle. So whenever it's that 30, 90, 60, 120, all those, I pay a little extra attention to, because they're degrees of the circle. And then 424, we have a mirroring number, a palindrome. I call them sandwich numbers. And again, it's like the mind, the 4 is protecting the emotions. So having a strong mind, having mind over matter kind of thing, and mind over everything, to have that. And then 1216, I have that as like understanding the wheels to give you the Christ within, or to reach the Christ within. So the 1216, it would be understanding the wheels, understanding what the 12 is, understanding that, and to also give you the Christ within, which the 16 is connected to as well. And then I have some ciphers on the next one, or some more matches, on the next one. So we had Jupiter, which is Thor's day. So we have Thursday right there. Avatar that showed up. Your evil skill. Your symbiotic craft. Right? It's really interesting that is there. Publicity. We got United States. There's no but United States America still shows up there.
Tony Robbins.
There was a lot of like if you go to the right side, there's like death penalty. There was a lot of like kind of captivity. There was kind of this a little bit of like a little aggressive, but also like the law as well. That seem to show up in a lot of these as well. If there's any that stick out to you. But yeah,
that's the martial aspect. So, Dionysus, in the hymn to Dionysus, it calls him bullface and martial, bearer of the vine. So he is very militaristic as well.
And yesterday was St. Martin's Day, 11/11.
It's really interesting.
And then if you go back, I think there was one more I wanted to talk about. Or it might have been on the next one.
This one?
Yeah, I'll just move on.
All right, my bad.
So the 153rd prime, which was the number 883. So yeah, we have Think Mirror, Double Jeopardy, prime numbers, number letter. It's schizophrenic, which also schizophrenia, the word schiz was traced back to the Greek Bible. I forget the exact Bible quote, but essentially it means like when you have the mind awakening experience, when the firmament opens and you have like the mind awakening experience, your mind schizzes, and that's where they get the word schizophrenia from, is like you're having that mind opening experience and you're skitzing out, you're seeing the deception, you're seeing the mirrors, you're seeing all that kind of thing. And then but it's also what it is today.
One thing I'd like to say on that skitzing out, there's a lot to consider about the idea that the English language has far too many words, and I'm not being judgmental. I'm just saying that we have an immense amount of superfluous mouth sounds that we actually venerate. The more fancy mouth sounds you can make, the more laurels you'll get from your peers. But it just blows my mind that there are so many languages out there who get the job done with just 30,000 words. But barely even a fraction of what we use. And I ponder kind of along the lines of the theory of Ur-speak, that maybe there is an ancient language that actually the phonetics attached to reality with a potency that has been long lost. And when we're using English, I think of it metaphorically as English is we're floating on the top of an ocean that is so vast nobody's ever taken the time to dive down. And somewhere under all of those superfluous mouth sounds, there's this hidden underwater sanctuary where the Ur speak is preserved. So schizophrenia is realizing how superfluous all of those mouth sounds were. And that, in fact, there is some bedrock of truth that we can access through the arts to speak more potently than we could ever imagine. And we probably blow our own minds to harmonize to that potency. So that's something that I think is happening right now in the synchro-mystic realm, is we're realizing that we have way too many words that are actually interwoven and interreferentially bound together with intention and meaning that the social engineers long ago seemed to be actually giving us clues along the way. But a lot of the neologisms coming out of the social constructs today, they seem to be messages that will self-destruct in a fascinating way. So I just wanted to mention that as well, the schizophrenia of revelation.
Well, if you think about words like good morning, right? And you're putting these words together that are sad sounding words and you're having people repeat them, you end up getting a negative feedback loop.
DJ, did you want to talk about this last slide, or are you done with this?
I think we're good with the slides, yeah.
Okay. I find it interesting you got grape again. Yeah, it kind of goes back to wine a little bit. Like, again, but
yep.
You did talk about that. I like how there's Master of Light, the True Light. There was a lot of stuff before that was mentioned.
Well, there's so much, dude. Shu is part of his mythology because he walked all the way to India. And that's where he developed all of his following.
The green monster is on there too, which harkens to Osiris and his green depiction, and of course the green agricultural god energy of Dionysus, and also Green Man, the Green Man, which is very much related to the primal agricultural god, and related to Dionysus as well. A bit of a reach as far as the green relationship can be found with Milarepa or Milarepa. And he's kind of the Tibetan Buddhist wise man on top of the mountain. If you've ever seen any depictions of a traveler and foreigner going to find the wise man on the mountain, Milarepa is the saint of Tibet, and the very much the wisdom teacher of Tibet. And one of the things he does when he first finds his teacher to relate to the 3 and 4 is he's forced to build 3 houses that his teacher rejects, and he finally accepts him on the 4th house. And Milarepa is depicted as this green man because he fasts on nettle tea, and he becomes green himself. So I found there are many poems or songs by Milarepa, and I found one that mentions alcohol and beer, and I find it to be revealing to this whole idea of Dionysus and the alchemy of the grapes into wine for perhaps intoxication and getting to that point of schizophrenic look at one of the results of the mysteries or the initiation was that they're no longer afraid of death. And it's almost very much like that schizophrenic peer into the world of the dead. And let me read this very short Milarepa song, who is again the green skinned Tibetan saint. Hearken, my sons, if you want to climb the mountain peak, you should hold the self's mind's light, tie it in a great knot, and catch it with a firm hook. If you practice thus, you can climb the mountain peak to enjoy the view. Come, you gifted men and women, drink the brew of experience. Come inside to enjoy the scene. See it and enjoy it to the full. The incapable remain outside. Those who cannot drink pure beer may quaff small beer. He who cannot strive for Bodhi should strive for superior birth. And a quick explanation there, superior birth in Tibetan Buddhism is far from what we might think of it in the West. To have superior birth in the Buddhist mindset, in that relation at least, is to be born in just the right environment where you have a little, but you don't have too much. And so thus you can aspire to be the Bodhi, to be a developed being from how you were perhaps originally set forth. This idea, I think, is interesting in drinking and the intoxication of life and going inside, which of course harkens to the esoteric and the individuation teachings rather than the perverted exoteric, the political initiations that we see being hoisted upon us rather than the self-development pursuits. So I thought the green skin with Osiris and the green color of Dionysus, I thought it was interesting in relation to Milarepa.
I think it's the same thing, though. I mean, like, if you think about it, the personal development on the inside takes a kind of a destructive course. Like, you've got to get rid of a lot of crap to really elevate yourself, and that's a very painful process. And if you think about what they would be trying to do with society, is they would try to artificially inflict that pain to sort of spur them in a certain direction. Now, you can't really initiate the unwilling, right? Like, that's not a thing, but you can kind of brainwash them with it. So it's on a different level, you know? But I think it's been going on since the beginning. All these different symbols come together and kind of have an effect on everybody without them knowing, essentially, that their will is being influenced.
Ethan, your poem harmonizes to my vision here on the Slick Dissident channel in a beautiful way. The Hermit card takes the 9 position in my Enneagram, and I'm going to bring it a little closer. So this is the shape of it, and the 9 position is at the top. The number 1 position, just like a clock, is right next to it, goes all the way around. But the 9th personality type is considered slothful, but not in that judgmental aspect. Sloth would be the shadow or the vice. But they are also diligent, they have perseverance, they excel in solitude, and it is at the pinnacle of the mountain. And so your poem about climbing to the top of the mountain, and not everybody has the wherewithal. I think about oxygen deprivation and some people are really good climbers and better than others. But sure enough, also your poem, it even harmonizes to the card itself. This is the Hermit card in the Thoth deck. I'm a big fan of the Thoth deck because I find a lot of hard lessons in this deck. A lot of hard lessons. It's not coming through very well, but it's extremely green, and he's in a field of some sort of plant. It looks like a wheat or a barley. It could be ganja buds. But yeah, it definitely resonates to your poem. That's really beautiful.
And to your point of the relationship, Milarepa was the ultimate hermit. He really spent, especially after receiving his teachings, after building the 4 houses, 3 rejected, 1 accepted, he really spends most of his time away from everyone. And to the point that his teacher gives him a note at one time that he says, when you get to your rock bottom, you can read this, essentially. And he's, been alone for a long time, and he finally decides to read the note, and it says, "Don't forget to eat and take care of yourself."
What's the time frame on Marorepa?
I think this is around 1000 AD.
Okay.
Maybe 500. His songs are wonderful, or his poems that are called the 100,000 Songs Milarepa are wonderful and inspiring, and they all have this aspect that we kind of touched on, this esoteric, inspirational kind of idea, even though he's talking about, hey, have a drink and enjoy the view. It's also just really metaphorical, and to that idea of metaphor and metaphysical idea, I think that is really the message in the grapes to wine. And another group, of course, that's related to Dionysus by a couple of steps, but certainly related, that are really powerful evokers of this wine metaphor or analogy are the Sufis, and their whole thing is about how most religions are just grapes, and the true loving lesson is in the wine. And your grape can be from over there and a different variety, and it all comes together to create wine. And I think the first lesson in that, there are many, of course, but the first lesson is very simple in its presentation, that we got to look at the metaphor of the grapes and the wine, the metaphor of the religious instructions and lessons, not just the dogma, right? When we get caught up in the literal aspects of the religion, that's the grapes. That's silly stuff. You have to refine it into the wine by seeing the metaphor pertinent, at least in the beginning, to the individual journey, the individual esoteric aspect of the development kind of level of it.
Thank you for that. My mind just had a little broadening as you were speaking, as I realized I don't think of the other types of wine. When I hear wine, I have a limited, narrow mental image. I always think of red wines. And as you were speaking, I was like, I love all the other wines, I'm not going to lie. I kind of like my pink wines. Moscato's badass.
Oh, dude, beautiful. I got a wine for you. Have you ever had cranberry wine?
Yum.
Mm-mm.
That sounds fun.
They make here in Wisconsin a cran ruby. Cranberry
What's
wine,
the ruby?
Rhubarb.
Oh wow. That sounds really fun to drink.
Whoa. See how the frenzies work, y'all? Do you see how the frenzies work? He just said a word. We're miles away from each other. He said rhubarb, and I'm on fire. I can't wait till tomorrow. I got to get some. That's
right.
awesome.
So then even with that on wine, and then that's also the beer, like that just is more like the alcoholic beverages in general.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like vodka is just potato wine, kind of. Like if you really were to, well, you could look at it that way. But that goes with the mountain, because also the mountain, what's the liquid of the mountain? It's the Mountain Dew. Well, Mountain Dew, right, the beverage we're all familiar with, was originally created as a whiskey chaser. That was its original purpose. Fun Mountain Dew fact. And then also this whole mountain thing, the Green Man and all this is also simply told to us in the story of the Grinch. And he's at the top of the mountain, and he's miserable, and everyone's down there just having fun, and he's like, you guys don't know anything. And they're like, dude, just come vibe. Like they're just trying to vibe, like they don't care. They're just like, we're celebrating and having a good time. And he's like, no, right? And I think it goes with like the Enlightenment and the schizophrenia too a little bit, but like that whole thing where like, if you stay too much on like the hermit mountain, like you still have to come down from the mountain kind of thing. Like you stay up there, you're going to be a miserable Grinch. You're going to kind of become that green monster.
Yeah, buddy. You know, Headless. Wow.
So this tarot I got.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well,
I'll go after you.
I got a tarot. I don't know if you're a big fan of Art Nouveau, but it's one of my favorite art styles. One of my favorite painters. Hold on, let me get this paper.
I just talked about the Grinch on my channel recently, so that's a nice sync.
Yeah. So this is sort of the Art Nouveau style, right?
Gorgeous.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Right. So this was like the start of advertising because this guy made play posters for this one actress. And basically his posters were so much more popular than her performances because it was so gorgeous. And they made these posters all over France, right? And so he started the whole print advertising medium. And if you look up on top here, it's blank because they would actually use this as an advertisement.
So you could plug in something for your cause. Is that
Exactly.
Brigitte? Is that Brigitte?
It looks like her, doesn't it?
It sure does.
But that's like his style. So his name is Franz Mucha, and they made a tarot deck sort of inspired by his works. And so, you know, if you can imagine, these are all like some pretty interesting kind of card takes on these tarot. I don't know if you could see that, but that's the Hermit card. And as you were talking about the Hermit, I just wanted to hold that up so you could see it. It's got the six-sided star inside of the little lantern right there. And I thought that was a, pretty potent symbol. Here's the Devil card. Definitely a Dionysian type vision there.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, she's all rocking out. She's rocking out. Oh, okay. I see the male and the female on her hands.
Right.
Yowzers.
So that's a pretty potent one. Here's another one. The 20.
Yeah.
I forgot what that was.
Judgment or Aeon?
That's Aeon. Yeah, I think it's Aeon. Here's the Sun card.
Oh, beautiful.
How about that for Dionysian?
That's beautiful.
Fucking gorgeous, dude. Here's the Star.
Ooh.
Yeah, dude.
Is there a bird in the background? What was that bird?
I think that was an eagle.
Okay, yeah.
Looks kind of eagle-like.
Nice.
But it could be a raven. Probably some Odin in there. Here's the Strength card.
Beautiful. Is that a red feather in her hat?
I believe that is... no, that's his tail.
Okay.
That's his tail in the background. Here's the moon.
Nice.
The Lovers.
Yeah. Wowzers.
That's a fucking good one, dude.
Uh-huh.
And then last one I got is the Hanged Man.
There it is. Man, Headless, something I've learned about the Hangman is Harry Houdini is like his entire biography packs into the Hangman card. And that little nugget is vast and profound, but, it's like he was a living Odin hanging from Yggdrasil for a career,
Absolutely.
Well, Headless, while I got your ear, buddy, I wanna just kind of hear what you know about the Millerites and the Millerite movement, because I've heard you mention it, and I've wanted to also pay forward to you that I believe that the film Brave with Disney is buzzing psychically on some of the history of the Millerites. I think that one of the fellas who was an enthusiast before the event, he was seeking out a young redheaded girl in the countryside, and she was going to be the avatar. And I believe that the Brave movie was actually fulfilling what he was seeking in a fascinating, almost to drum up this prophecy yet again. And then I want to pay this forward to you. The Millerites, they missed Nietzsche's birthday by 1 week. And for the nihilist Messiah to miss the appointment is so ironically impeccable. It's ironically impeccable. It's just flawless. So I wanted to pay that forward, but I want to hear what you know about the Millerites.
Well, I mean, you summed it up right there. So let's say Nietzsche says God is dead because he was born right at the end of the Millerite thing. So it was a group of people following this pastor who said that the end of the world was going to be in 1846. I was reading about it in a encyclopedia, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And so, basically what they did is they sold off all of their stuff, and they were just waiting out there in the village green to be, lifted up into heaven. And it never happened. And so they had to get on with their lives and move on.
Man, it resonates so heavily with the Sabbatean prophecy. Everybody's got their stuff packed. Here we go. Let's all get ready. And then this huge, they call it the Great Disappointment. It's so heavy.
But the Millerites are not alone. This was happening every couple hundred years all over Europe. Christianity was designed to create Millerites every couple of years so that they could be kind of culled and managed and moved around. That's a big part of it.
Yes. And I believe that some of the momentum from that is still like kind of a bit of a torch. I've heard that a lot of those agendas from that movement are now kind of still happening in the Baha'i faith. Do you guys know about the Baha'i?
I know a little bit. They're like the CIA's favorite cult.
Bingo, bingo. I am so suspect of the Baha'i. I actually, well, I won't talk about that, but no, I am going to talk about that. My father and his wife live in separate houses. They live in separate houses, and that's great. It works out. But I'm always like thinking in the back of my head, like, are they secretly Baha'i and they're not telling me? They're like crypto Baha'i. But what a boon for the real estate industry to have a religion that you need 2 houses at a minimum. What a fascinating boon. And I also think that the Baha'i has the Raelians grafted in. And if that's the case, the Mormons and Scientologists are just butt buddies around the corner.
That's the thing. What they'll do is they'll have certain cults that they use as informants, because the CIA's primary job is to turn informants in different areas. And that's kind of what they have with the Mormons, because the Mormons join all those intelligence organizations in droves. So you've got basically these cults that feed directly into government, and the Baha'i would be one example. You've got that going on over in Russia too. I forgot his name, but the big philosopher that they have that was interviewed by Jordan Peterson, he's like their religious cult angle that they're bringing into their government.
Alexander Dugin.
That's the guy.
And the Russian Orthodox Church is very much supportive of the military-industrial complex of Russia, and all of these are wonderful examples of the grapes. They're not refined. They're taking these lessons into political and monolithic actions. That's not what it's about. Right. The jihad is not to be practiced externally. It's the internal war. right? And like it's like every good trip was a bad trip, going back to the Dionysian rites. Like you gotta look at the mirror, actually, right? You gotta look at yourself, because that's where the real battle is. And so these grape kind of religions are just like, you're a tool. You're not even worth being called a religion. It makes people want to be.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up, because these symbols are the tools that they're using to influence all of these religions. We're getting an incomplete picture. You have to go to the time before these religions emerged to actually understand the totality of the thing. The two is not separate, like morality, like good and bad. These things are intrinsically linked, but they don't have any mythology telling them that. They're always putting it on the other, and they're always pushing it outside of themselves. They have to understand that there is a synthesis of self, and balance is a key. But there's nothing like that in the Abrahamic faiths. It's all about extremism. It's all about this fanatic God, right?
Yeah, man.
And so we see that cycle replaying over and over again because it's encoded right into their myths. They don't have the symbols for it.
So I got a power weave on Dugan, and I think you'll dig it, Headless. I think sometimes you see these guys, these egregoric movers and shakers, hailing each other in plain sight. And I feel compelled to point out truth when I see it. So Alexander Dugan, his middle name is Jellyvich. And again, I wish I had better lighting. I wish I was like Mario. Mario's got the best setup to drop tail on people. Man, he's pimping. All right. For a married guy, he's pimping. All right. There we go. That kind of does it. Not so well. But anyway, this is
the Empress?
It's the Empress of the Thoth deck. And Lady Frida Harris, her code name was Jesus Chutney. And Jesus is the fish, chutney is the jelly, and that is a code name for jellyfish. And Alexander Dugan's middle name is Jellyvich. And Jason Rizza Giorgiani is so amazing. I absolutely respect that fellow. However, there is some signaling going on in plain sight, as the Emperor card has the orange on his knee. And if you take the cover art of Alexander Dugan's book, The Fourth Philosophy, The Way of the Fourth Philosophy, something like that. Political Fourth Way. I don't know. I forget the title. It's actually dressed up in Giorgiani's name. The card that has Giorgiani's name is the cover art of Dugan's work. And Giorgiani's cover art has jellyfish all over it. So they're handling each other's pen names in their cover art. And what's fascinating is they share the same publisher, Arctos Press. And so there is common ground for them to be working an agenda for the kind of classic pincher maneuver, right? One person is political, the other guy is sci-fi spiritual. And these cards are sequential. This is card number 4. This is card number 3. So they're side by side. They're a marriage. Empress, Emperor. They're a marriage intrinsically. So I see Dugan and Giorgiani hailing each other. And there's some thread that I just can't find receipts for with Ammon Hillman. Ammon Hillman makes this classic pincher maneuver a real complete three wise man trinity. But I can't put Hillman through. They don't have any common ground. But he would be a necessary ingredient for sparking off the new whatever. Deviation from the norm.
Hillman was a CIA asset. He actually fully talks about that.
See, that's all I needed. Thank you.
But I think what's funny about Hillman is that he's got all of these translations, right? But it never seems to go anywhere. Like you'd think after a little bit, you'd find some of the answers that he's looking for. Like, what is this drug? Like, what is it really made out of? And he says it's got all these different ingredients. Why isn't somebody tried to produce it yet? Are the steps too hard to do? I mean, he always brings up the Galen. Well, let's see it,
Right. And he never talked placenta. One more thing that, I oftentimes I find myself armchair chat rooming where I wish I could like protest and be heard. So I'm super stoked to, say these things somewhere.
Right.
But I'm kind of a nerd about conflating the word drugs and the word medicines. And I think that if we all were really driven to speak impeccably, we would be specific that drugs are synthetic and medicines are naturally occurring. Now, granted, you do have to do alchemical processes, even to medicines, but I think there's just something fascinating about the war on drugs is this industrialized regulatory capture. But meanwhile, medicine is still running rogue. It's not regulated. It's less regulated. It seems to be the frontier of freedom in the medicine domain, whereas drugs, you get yourself locked up quick. But yeah, that's something he does a lot. He's like, oh, they were on drugs, and it's all drugs. And I'm like, no, it would just be so much more potent if you would say medicine, But yeah, that's one of my mini beefs.
I like that. I think it's very interesting. If I can just say that, I isn't it anecdotally anyway, my observation is that people who enjoy cannabis tend not to pursue the more chemical drug experiments. It's just been my anecdotal observation. I don't know if you guys vibe with that or not, but there's like people, they'll do all kinds of stuff that I can't even pronounce. And I'm just like, no, I'll just fuck with the weed. Like, and it's a weird, kind of dichotomy I find, but I don't know if it's entirely accurate.
To talk a little bit about what was going on when it comes to the drug angle is you got to go to the Eleusinian mystery schools, right? And the Eleusinian mysteries were brutal. Lots of people fucking died doing that shit.
And went mad.
Because they would throw you in a cave on some of the most potent, maddening drugs you could imagine, right? So what's that stuff called? It's a little white flower. It looks like a 4 o'clock. I forgot the name of it, but basically it's part of the poison family that's related to potatoes. I forgot the name of it specifically, but it would actually not hemlock. No, that's too potent.
Too poisonous.
Yeah, it's a small white flower. It grows wild in North America anyway, but this stuff was so potent that it would knock these people into this frenzy that they would have to be brought out of like they were being born again, right? And so that process, though brutal, you could see how it would be an initiation that, couldn't really be compared to. Like I've heard of some European traditions where they would do the witch's cradle, which is where they would basically hang in a net for 3 or 4 days, right? Wow. With no sunlight, no access to, food or water or anything like that. And in those conditions, you would have like a spontaneous, crossing of the veil or something. And a lot of this stuff was passed down through different generations, and we don't have it anymore because, it's all wiped out. So there's sort of this hole in our collective memory, and I think you start to look at some of the things that emerge. I don't know if you've ever looked at the ancestral rat studies. What you'll do is you'll have these rats who are sperm donors get shocked, right? And then their children that have had no access to the fathers will actually respond similar to those conditions, even though they had no contact with the original experiencer of it.
Yeah.
How much more for humans?
Right. Yeah. So much more. I always love to point out, I think this gets overlooked but it's so obvious, Eleusinian and hallucination, it's kind of obvious, but I think that one slides through people's radar a lot. And also, something that I love is there's a lot of rites of passage that are readily available for all of us simply by abstaining. And one very simple example is like intermittent fasting, and you can even, and then also tactical fasting. You can take a couple days, or some people run with it. But eventually, think of it, you end up in a hallucination. If you don't eat long enough, you will hallucinate. And I think we should practice this. I think there's some hip hop song, I forget who it was, but he says that you should practice fasting for when the trucks can't get to you and when the supplies run out. That's when your demons come out. And you need experience with what your demons are going to look like when you're hungry. And so I think that's a worthy rite of passage for everybody to batten down. And it doesn't, in fact, not only does it not cost you anything, it saves you. It saves. You're saving when you go through these passages. And then another one I always love to point out is fasting from grammar, also known as a vow of silence. Going on retreat and having no conversations, and even stilling the conversations with yourself for a prolonged period. Fasting from grammar, the Greeks considered language an intoxication. And so there's something of a shared illusion when I speak and you have these hallucinations in your mind that I put there because we're communing, we're having a communion of these words. And so I really enjoy, it's been a while, but going on retreat and fasting from grammar, and then pay extra attention to those first times back in the world and what the effects of mouth sounds from other humans have on you, because it will feel new and you'll have a very unique perspective on what grammar creates, the glamour of the shimmer of listening, the glistening of listening.
Well, I know when people are put into a box that has no sound, it doesn't take long for the sound of their own heartbeat to, be deafening in their ears. And, these small things are taking a huge toll, and we're not even realizing it. Go ahead, TJ.
I was just going to say, I have done 40 days and 40 nights fasting, and I tripped for about a year. I was on a trip for about a year. It was like, it was crazy. It was some crazy enlightenment stuff. Like, I just felt like I was just so connected to like the ether. And I just I learned so much in that year. Like, if I know anything, a lot of it's from like that fasting and the like trip after. And I was like, I don't know, I was crazy. Like, I was just, the stuff that I was like coming up with and everything, it was crazy. It was really crazy.
Can I ask how you fasted?
It was at the end of or like August 2020, so like the pandemic and stuff, and I just mentally prepared. I knew that I wanted to do it for a while and I wanted to get clean. I was also deciding to go sober at the time, so it was like this whole big thing, and I basically just, I don't know, I prepared myself, just slowed down, and then I was quitting because I was quitting alcohol. I did have like one beer a day to like get any kind of something. So it was kind of, again, like that going to the top of the mountain as well, kind of connects with all that. And then I quit drinking, and I'm like, it's 4 years now since that time I did that. And I'm preparing myself for another fast. I'm pretty excited.
And the number 40, of course, it's a very powerful, kind of inspirational set of initiation, right? So that the 40 days in the desert is a allegorical for a whole initiation, and to me it harkens to the Tetragrammaton, which has the 4 and the 10. So
Right? 20 plus 20, 2020 had to happen. And it had to be 2020, had to be the year.
Beautiful work. Beautiful work. Another factor, Venus has a 40-day retrograde. That would be really potent to harmonize to that dynamic shift, you know.
Guys, go outside tonight and look up because Venus is huge in the sky right now.
we'll do.
Yeah, I think I saw it the other day. I was like, holy, like it was like, whoa.
Yeah. So on election night, Venus and the moon were essentially right on top of each other. Next, and Mercury was only a few degrees to the off to the side of them, but they were all Mercury, Venus, and the moon were in Sagittarius. And Sagittarius has a minor decan that I'm a big fan of. It's called the Ara Altair constellation. And this is an altar, sacrificial table, or it could be the workbench of the Magi. You know what I mean? When people hear altar, they automatically think that it's, blood and gore. But it's also just, your workspace. But it's right under the heel of Ophiuchus. And so if you imagine Ophiuchus, he's got 1 foot on the arrow of Sagittarius. Some say it's also balancing on the tail of the scorpion. And he's stepping away. He's got his back to the world, and he's the scapegoat. He's the pharmakos. He's launching off of the elliptic plane. But if his heel bleeds...
I got something for you.
Yeah.
I got to real quick. So there were 136 Greek constellations.
Yes.
And we only have 13 of them now.
Right. Yeah, that's a huge number. That's 136 is like they were incredibly detailed because that's
Just to not correct you, but kind of it's like we have 88 constellations would be more that number. We have 12 zodiac signs, 12 and a half.
No.
I consider Ophiuchus kind of its own.
The
beyond
Greek
the wheel.
zodiac signs, it's got to be more than 13, but it's a very small number in comparison to the rest of them because the 88 number is the total across the sky. So it was similar in that way, but
right. So if Ophiuchus's heel is being punctured, then the drops of blood from his heel drop right straight down onto the Ara Altair constellation. It's so mystical when you consider coterminal constellations and their ramifications upon one another. And so Ophiuchus's foot or leg occupies approximately 5 days. It's an extremely limited window, and it starts on JFK Day, November 22nd, right up till Thanksgiving. And so let me buzz on JFK for a second. So the day that that the sun is right on Ophiuchus is the day that he dies, and the blood of the Ophiuchus drops onto the altar. It's all very ceremonial. But I want to share something really weird around the words. I can barely even pronounce it. What's the name of the film for JFK? Is it Chaputer? Chaputery? How do you say that word?
Chakruder film, I believe.
Thank you. Chakruder film. Okay, I think I've been saying it wrong.
Zapruder. No, it's Abraham Zapruder.
Zapruder. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
remember that because he was, the one Jewish guy on the scene that got the video.
Right. And then the video gets sent to get sliced and diced.
Manipulated.
And worked up for a nice bounty for the people to commune on.
How strange is it that there's multiple versions? It's just very, very strange. Excuse me.
Yes,
please,
yes.
I want to hear what you say.
Yeah. Well, it turns out and this was the strangest fleeting thought, but when you chase these things down, they substantiate to such a powerful degree. I learned that Friedrich Nietzsche was obsessed with charcuterie, and he wrote home to mom all the time, or maybe his sister. I think it's his mom, about charcuterie. And it was just this repeating theme in his life. And I'm thinking, wait a second. Zapruder film, sharpshooter, charcuterie. The entire limousine is a charcuterie board. And there's flesh on this board. And even Jackie, she's like a rolled up sausage with her little pink hat on. So then I start looking at other words that are really corresponded to the sharpshooter, charcuterie, charcuterie, and it turns out chaperone, the chaperone. They were chaperoned. They were surrounded by bodyguards, and she had to go to her chaperone when the event happened. And I'm just looking at this, and I'm just like, why do all of these words that shouldn't have anything to do with each other, why do they meet in a trauma event? And the answer is because it was a communion. A charcuterie board is a communion. It's a centerpiece of a Dionysian ritual. And when we partake, when we take it apart, we are partaking in this Dionysian rite. And that little fact is kind of a recipe for how words you would never think have anything to do with each other find their common ground in some of the darkest rituals that we have all partaken of. Pretty creepy, huh?
Have you guys ever read the early life for Abraham Zapruder?
What? No.
Yeah, let me read you his Wikipedia article and see how many dots he can put together. Zapruder was born into a Ukrainian Jewish family in the city of Koval in the Russian Empire, now Ukraine. The son of Israel Zapruder, he received only 4 years of formal education in Ukraine. In 1909, his father left for North America. In 1918, Abraham Zapruder, Russian Revolution.
1918.
Yeah. Abraham Zapruder left Koval for Warsaw with his family. At some point, Zapruder's brother was pulled off a train and murdered in front of his family, apparently Polish guards. By Polish guards. In 1920, his family immigrated to the United States, settling in Brooklyn, New York, where they reunited with Israel Zapruder. So these guys were a family of spies.
That is so rich. That is rich.
That is so rich. I love it. If you guys don't mind, unfortunately, I'm probably gonna have to wrap it up. So maybe we will leave it with that that wild fun fact.
I have kind of one last thing that was tying it all together with a thought that I had earlier, and it had to do with the charcuterie being mostly pork based, traditional, not traditionally, but it just seems like it's usually a lot of those cured meats are all pork. But then that gets me going back to the animalistic nature, because pigs, whether I think it's a half moon cycle or a full moon cycle, when they're let out into the wild, they grow hair and become boars. And I think about that with the countries and the cities and all that. You go into the city, you're more in that domestication, and it's more like maybe we're supposed to be hairier because it's like we're in this kind of domestication and just the connection with humans and pigs and all
nice. That. Yes.
And then
yeah.
And then just one last positive thing too is that I talk about the difference between human nature and animal nature, and a lot of times people confuse what is this animal nature with what is our human nature, which is to have the empathy and the higher self of that versus the lower self, the animal nature, and understanding that the two. And sometimes people connect to animal nature more, or what they think is human nature to be more animal nature.
Right.
I got two things real quick. Oh,
okay.
We'll wrap it up.
If I can just throw it in. You also had Apollo, which was like Dionysus, who basically was the higher form of it. And even at the Oracle at Delphi, they had the burial place for Zagreus. So you have all of that stuff coming together with that myth right there. And also, Zapruder was a Freemason and an Inspector General 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite. Just wanted to end with that.
Why not?
Illuminati confirmed.
and gives the film to Time magazine, right? Wasn't it something like that? Yeah. Interesting.
Yep.
So one thing on the pig, the defiling of the Temple of Zeus in 70 AD ish had to do with killing a pig on the altar to so that the temple was no longer pure, and so that.
Epiphanes.
Yes, you got it. Yeah, that ties into the charcuterie being a defiling communion. All right. I'm going to stop weaving because we could go all night, Nick. We could go all night. Let's do it again soon.
Oh, no, for sure, for sure. I'd love to get you back on with this. Thank you all for coming on, man. I thought that was great. That was a lot of stuff. I didn't even have to say anything. That was awesome for me. I appreciate you guys. I'll make sure, Slick, if you don't mind, after the show, just email me all your links that you would like me to share. But we will have Headless, Slick, Ethan, and TJ, all their links for all their shows or whatever they have, their blogs or wherever, whatever content they have. Their links will be in the bottom in the show notes. Thanks again for all of you making it on. TJ, thank you for that slideshow. I appreciate you spending the time to do that. That is what's up. And yeah, Slick, it was great to finally have you on. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've even said on the show in the past, I considered you an occult reject. You were just in the chat, So now it was finally nice to get you on the actual show. And hopefully we'll do more of that going forward. But that is the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.